So, President Biden has again gone back on his word, and this time it's because of the war between Israel and Hamas. Now, which one of his promises did he break this time? I mean, it's hard to guess since he's broken a bunch of promises and then some, but this time around, it's the one where the border walls would not go up another foot.
His administration is waiving 26 federal laws in South Texas for construction to go forward. Eyewitness News reporter Rob Hayes is live in the newsroom with the details. Rob?
Yeah, President Biden has long been dead set against border walls, but today he's clearing the way for miles of new fencing. He says that move, though, does not indicate a change in his policy.
So let me get this straight, guys. Doing the opposite, and I'm talking about the literal meaning of opposite here, okay? Doing the opposite of what you promised is not a change in his policy. And we're not talking about an old crisis here. We're talking about why he changed his mind. Could it be due to the war that's happening right now? I mean, if they had information beforehand, you would think that they would do something to have avoided these terrorists even entering the country, right? The FBI is actually warning us of threats that may be coming to our country because of these wars. So yeah, a lot of critics are not taking out the terrorism aspect of the situation as to why the White House is forced to waive 26 federal laws to have construction resume at the border wall.
The FBI is now warning about the growing threat of terrorist attacks here in the U.S.
That's right. The FBI director says the agency is seeing an increase in reported threats against both Jewish and Muslim Americans. And now local authorities are working to keep these communities safe. Joining us is NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winters. So, Tom, did the FBI director elaborate on the exact kinds of threats they're seeing right now?
Right. Well, it's all centered around what we're seeing in the Middle East, in this Israel and Hamas war, what's going on there. There's an awful lot of rhetoric online. And he made those comments in front of the International Association of Chiefs of Police gathering in San Diego over the weekend, focusing in telling them effectively, hey, we're on this, but we've got an increase in threats. And now it's up to law enforcement to determine how credible these threats are, if any of these individuals are capable of acting out. And if so, if it meets the threshold, you're allowed to say a lot in this country under the First Amendment, but you're not allowed to threaten people's lives. And so if certain things are triggered, then they're able to make an arrest. Or if you're supporting Hamas materially with funding, financing, or trying to help them out in any way, they're a designated foreign terrorist organization. You could end up in handcuffs. So that's what the FBI appears to be focused on.
Again, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy here, but is the White House bracing for attacks that could happen right here at home? Tell you what, guys, let's take a quick poll in the comments. Do you believe that this move from the White House is being influenced by these current happenings? Comment a quick yes or no on that one. And while you guys are thinking about that, make sure you drop a like for the video and subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so that you don't miss out on any of these crucial updates that you and everyone here in the U.S. deserves to know about. Appreciate the love, guys.
In the U.S., authorities tell NBC News the war has opened the door to extremists looking to incite violence, with one official warning of a heightened threat environment. Let's get more now from Maggie Vespa.
Tonight, authorities in the U.S. ramping up security amid warnings about potential violence mounting nationwide over the Israel-Hamas war. In New York, the NYPD ordering officers indefinitely to be uniformed and ready to deploy. American officials and private analysts telling NBC News extremists are flooding social media with calls for attacks on Jewish communities and other targets in the U.S. and Europe, with groups linked to al-Qaeda and American neo-Nazis seeking to exploit the war, according to intelligence memos obtained by NBC News. A Homeland Security official telling NBC News DHS is monitoring a heightened threat environment in the U.S. The FBI also on high alert.
We stay laser focused on mitigating those threats.
Tonight, the NYPD's hate crimes unit asking for the public's help finding this man who they say punched a woman in a subway station Saturday, telling her he did it, quote, because you are Jewish.
But getting back to this defense of the country, right? I believe I said some time ago, but just to jog you guys' memory, I remember saying that we shouldn't be naive when it comes to this war. You guys remember me talking about that, right? What did I mean by that? Well, there's plenty of people here in our country who think that a war happening in a completely different area of the world won't affect us at all. But given as to how the White House and local governments are handling this thing, I'm betting that they're fearful of just how much we actually may be affected by this entire conflict.
And amid this war and all of this uncertainty back in the U.S. tonight, security is now being stepped up. Tonight, ABC News confirming that every major city police department in the country is now on heightened alert amid concerns of threats against synagogues and houses of worship and some schools. Here's our senior investigative reporter, Aaron Katursky, on the concerns and what authorities are now doing tonight.
Tonight, police across the country are on high alert after online calls for a global day of action tomorrow.
No justice, no peace.
There have been peaceful demonstrations nationwide since that horrific Hamas attack, and federal officials say they know of no specific plans for violence in the United States. But Attorney General Merrick Garland telling President Biden today they're watching for any sign of a terror threat here at home.
As you guys can see here, the concern is real. The FBI's Christopher Wray is saying it. Attorney General Merrick Garland is saying it. President Biden has pretty much shown that they're waiting on these possibilities. So I guess the problem that we now face is, how will these problems start to happen? Wray says that there's a chance that we see either groups or lone wolves acting out and spreading fear.
Well, the U.S. government is warning law enforcement nationwide about the potential for unrest as a result of the Israel-Hamas war. A new intelligence bulletin suggests lone offenders who are inspired by the events transpiring overseas pose the greatest threat to Americans here in the States. CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge is joining us now with a little more on this. Listen, Catherine, you've reviewed multiple law enforcement bulletins. What does the latest intelligence show us?
Well, Anne-Marie and Vlad, good to be with you. The latest bulletin comes from Homeland Security, FBI, and the National Counterterrorism Center, or NCTC. This is the government's hub for threat analysis, and it confirms an uptick in threats to the Jewish, Muslim, and Arab communities here in the U.S. And the greatest risk, it says, is posed by what law enforcement calls a lone offender or a lone actor. These are individuals who are inspired to act because of the violence they see overseas, and they're not part of a larger network or a group of cells, so there's very little chatter, and it's much harder for law enforcement to disrupt these efforts.
Now, I don't think that this situation is good for the president or for anybody for that matter, especially with us just peeking over the corner of a 2024 and, of course, the elections. And it's also why it looks like he's trying to step up his game just a little bit while walking a fine line between war and peace with this conflict.
You know, the conflict has also brought on new criticisms of the Biden administration by his GOP rivals. They're challenging him on his recent deal with Iran to release billions of dollars in block funds in exchange for detained Americans, and now linking that move to the Hamas attack. How is President Biden staying ahead of this?
Well, it's complicated. Republicans in Congress and those running for president have repeatedly criticized the administration for its deal with Iran, as you say, to unfreeze $6 billion for humanitarian aid in exchange for the release of those 5 American detainees, with some alleging without evidence that Iran used that money to fund the Hamas attacks against Israel. The Biden administration has repeatedly said Iran has not spent a penny of that money yet, with a top Treasury official telling members of Congress this week the U.S. and Qatar have now agreed to block Iran from accessing the funds as the United States continues to investigate whether Iran had any direct involvement in the Hamas attack.
Well, any thoughts on this, guys? Now, of course, I got to ask you guys if you think that the deal that the president made with Iran was influenced by these attacks at all. So please make sure you guys comment what you think down in the comment section down below. It's a very crazy world that we're living in right now. And before I go, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for dropping a like for the video. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.